let's get into what we're talking about right now on the Chicago sports scene. And for me, I think the biggest well, the biggest thing that I thought from last night and yesterday's sports was that the Chicago Bears signed a new tight end. They signed Demetrius Harris. Used to be with the Cleveland Browns. Also spent some time with the Chiefs, and his time overlapped with Matt Nagy. Right, so 6'7", 230 pounds, former basketball player. He is 28 years old. He'll be 29 in July. So he's not a young guy. Been in the league since 2014. So a lot of people are probably like, who is this guy? He hasn't ever had over 18 catches in a game. I mean, in a season. In a game, that'd be pretty awesome. He had 3 touchdown receptions each of the last 2 seasons, one with Cleveland, one with Kansas City. Been pretty durable, played at least 15 games in all of the last 5 seasons. But I think everybody knows that the Bears have a gap when it comes to production at the tight end spot. Everybody pretty much knows that this is the situation that the team is in. So we know that the Bears needed to do something about that spot. I'm not sure that this signing is, I'm not even sure this is, I don't think they're walking around. Hopefully they're not walking around feeling like, oh yeah, we solved the tight end situation because we got Demetrius Harris. Probably not. You're probably not feeling that way. If you are, that's probably pretty stupid. I don't think we've seen anything from this guy. He's been in the league long enough for if he was to actually be what I would call an impact player at the position, that we would have already seen some sort of flashes from that. And I don't think we've seen flashes. I think he's been a serviceable guy on mostly just Kansas City. When he was there, they weren't a great team, right? And he was with Cleveland last year, and he started 6 of 15 games, made 15 catches for had 3 touchdowns. It is what it is. So I mean, obviously we're hoping that this is like some sort of major find for the Bears. But if we're being totally realistic and totally honest, it probably isn't. It's probably just a backup second or third tight end at best. And the Bears still need a weapon at that position, especially if Trubisky is still your quarterback. Tight end is one of the best friends he can have, along with a better and improved offensive line and a good running game. Really need a playmaker at that position, especially a big body guy. So from a physical standpoint, Demetrius Harris would seem to fit that bill because it's 6'7", 230. Like I said, a former basketball player. He has the physical measurables that would get you excited, but he just hasn't been able to turn that into anything that should, make you think something special is coming. So we'll have to see what happens. I know that there was, and my man Nelson Blake is coming through, said Bears are trash, Bulls trash. You know what you got to love? You got to love it when people are consistent. He consistently hates on Chicago. So whether you're consistently positive or consistently negative, just be consistent. And that is what he is. Bears trash, Bulls trash. I understand. I got you. Understand. He's a New Yorker. They think everything is trash. You know why? Because there's so much trash on their streets that they get disillusioned and everything they see is trash everywhere. Trash. I understand. I got it. No problem. So, I mean, it's really, I saw some rumors about the Bears possibly looking at Hunter Henry, who has been injured, but when he is healthy, he is an absolute playmaker at tight end. And he is the type of presence that could impact the Bears offense. He really could. But honestly, I really just want most of these Chicago teams to start to acquire assets that don't have all of these major ifs and stuff. This is one of the reasons why when you acquire a guy like Khalil Mack, and I'll talk about Khalil Mack over the course of this NFL offseason, and I'll talk about the things about his game that I thought fell off in this past season. And I'll examine why that is. That's not a topic for today, but you be free to share your comments on this in the comment section. But I like it it's refreshing, right? When your team goes out and gets an absolute stud that for the most part doesn't have all of these disclaimers to them, right? Now, it's also awesome when your team acquires a talent who turns out to be more than you expected. That it's really difficult to get, to really like quantify how amazing that feels, right? But it's also difficult to really talk about how great it feels when your team literally goes out and gets a stud. Somebody who you like, if this guy's not a star, we're all shocked, kind of a thing. And that's obviously not what Demetrius Harris is. Um, I don't know that there's a tight end available on the free agent or even trade market that would, be that. Um, Even somebody like Greg Olsen, who is a proven star, has been so injured. The Seahawks just signed him. That was a risky. It's going to be. I mean, it's not really a risky signing because it was a low risk contract that he signed. But even somebody like that wouldn't have really done anything for me. If the Bears select a tight end high in the draft, I can understand that. Now, I'm of the belief that the Bears' number one need in the draft is a offensive lineman. They could go for a quarterback, and I wouldn't have an issue with that. But I think everybody knows that's not going to happen. There's no way in the world they're going to give up on Trubisky that soon, and to use a draft pick, one of their highest draft picks, to do that. They're not going to do that. But if they did something with a tight end, I wouldn't have an issue. I personally believe the number one in need is offensive line. Left tackle is, to me, should be the number one guy. Charles Leno is an absolute freaking turnstile. I mean, it is more people pass by him than a Sprint store on an Apple release. It is ridiculous, right? And he's also a penalty machine. He is a holding penalty waiting to happen. It's like if you were playing Madden and you had your sliders for penalties all the way up for holding, that's Charles Leno. So the left tackle to me is the number one need. Just the overall offensive line is an issue. Guard position, especially with Kyle Long's retirement and constant health issues. I think shoring up the offensive line changes everything for the Bears from an offensive standpoint. I think that it makes their running game better. I think that it also makes Trubisky more comfortable, so that he can depend on the running game. It opens up play action, gives him more time to throw, which is going to benefit any quarterback. Treborio Gigolo said, "What is with all the hate over Trubisky?" I have to ask Treborio, have you watched Trubisky play this year or over his entire career? Because as a Bears fan, somebody who has watched literally every single game he's ever played and every single professional snap that he's ever taken, if you watch those games, you know what the hate, and I wouldn't call it hate. I would call it more dissatisfaction. The Bears gave up a ridiculous amount to draft Mitchell Trubisky, number 2 overall. And it just so happens that in the same draft, later in that draft, the Kansas City Chiefs draft eventual MVP, eventual Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes, and the Houston Texans draft Deshaun Watson. 2 guys that the Bears could have drafted without giving up any assets. As a matter of fact, they could have traded back, added more assets, and still got Deshaun Watson. So what's going on, Jersey Deep TV? I appreciate you coming through. So that is part of it. And then when you look at, if you watch Trubisky play, he's very erratic. It's mostly his accuracy. Like I said, this is, if you look just at the statistics, you can say, oh, well, it's not too bad. Over 3,000 yards. He runs the ball pretty well for a quarterback. He's got more touchdowns than interceptions. Completion percentage is higher than somebody like Jameis Winston. And you can really kind of get deceived at who he is. Trubisky is a type of guy who I have an issue sometimes with Matt Nagy's play calling, but I do think he's capable enough with the right talent. It's hard to defend a quarterback who routinely misses open receivers in situations where if you complete this pass, if you put the ball on this guy, it's a score. Trubisky just is a habitual overthrower. So that's what he is. And that gives you it. But then at the same token, he'll have a little time period there where you'll say, man, that was a really good throw. Or man, that was a really good quarter. Sometimes, man, that was a really good half. Sometimes, man, that was a really good game, but it's the consistency just isn't there. And when you're playing against and watching him go against elite level quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, then you get out here, you play the Saints, and Drew Brees is hurt last year, and Teddy Bridgewater just lights you up, and you just literally keep going into quarterback after quarterback battle, and your team's constantly coming up on the short end. It's just really, it gets a little frustrating. And I think that is where most people in Chicago are when it comes to Trubisky. You'll be hard pressed to find somebody in Chicago who is 100% on Trubisky's team. So, Traboro says that he took the Bears to the postseason. I don't know if he took the Bears to the postseason. The defense took the Bears to the postseason. Trubisky didn't screw it up to the point where they didn't make it. He didn't take the Bears to the postseason. I don't know. It's just what it is. I appreciate you coming through, Coop, for real. I appreciate the long time following what's going on, Jordan Lattimore. It's hard to say they should throw the ball more, Traboro, if your quarterback isn't accurate. That's the thing. If your quarterback isn't accurate, it's hard to substantiate putting the ball in the air more. But I understand to a degree what you're saying, because the run blocking, I thought, was the weakest part of the Bears offense this year. And I think a lot of people were getting down on David Montgomery because they were talking about his lack of production. And I heard even people saying, oh, that's why we should have never let go. Jordan should have never left. Not Michael Jordan. I'm talking about Jordan Howard should have never left. Or they should have never let him walk. The Bears running game was better. They don't realize it wasn't so much. I like Jordan Howard. I thought he was one of those nice finds late in the draft. But Jordan Howard's success wasn't as much about him. When you compare Jordan Howard's success to what David Montgomery did, Jordan Howard played behind a better, more cohesive, more healthy offensive line than David Montgomery ran behind. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I'm not going to judge David Montgomery until he at least has a decent offensive line to play behind. I don't think the Bears have that in place. Charles Riley, appreciate you coming through. He says, I still don't think Trubisky really fits Nagy's style. I would say you're correct, which makes it even worse that they drafted him. He said Bears probably should move on, but can't because you don't want to be in that quarterback purgatory with various other franchises. I get you. I agree with what you're saying to a degree there, Charles. But you know what? Sometimes I think you gotta know. Right? You got to know when to say, we didn't get this right. We didn't get this right. And you got to know when you just got to say, you know what, we got to move on because we missed here. And I think sometimes franchises get caught in this vicious cycle because they sacrificed a bunch of assets to get into position to get a guy. And the guy isn't what they thought he was. He isn't what they hoped he was. I don't care what happens. Trubisky's never going to turn into a guy who looked to be worth the number 2 pick in the draft and worth all the assets the Bears gave up to get into position to get him. I understand that there's room for improvement, but I think in order for him to be worth that, I think he has to be a 4,200 yard passing, 4,200 yards a year passing guy, 30 touchdowns, 12 or less interceptions. And the Bears need to go deep into the playoffs, Super Bowl type. That's the only way you can substantiate trading everything that they traded and picking him number 2. Because here's the thing. I think Traboro was saying, well, he's not going to be the next, everybody's not going to be the next Tom Brady. The problem is when you give up the assets that the Bears gave up and you draft somebody number 2 overall, you're saying this is a superstar. This is a future star because what I gave up to get him says that that's what we believe he is. So that's the reason why he gets judged the way he's getting judged, because that's what the cost was. It's like you go to the store and you spend $500 on a pair of shoes, and you're like, okay, yeah, I got $500 shoes, and then you get them out and they don't feel right. They hurt your feet a little bit. I mean, you can wear them and they're not the most horrible shoes you ever got, but they hurt your feet a little bit. The rubber on the sole starts to tatter before you thought it should be. And you hold up that shoe and you're like, this shoe cost me $500. There's no way in the world this shoe should be falling apart the way it is right now. That's what up with Trubisky. He's a $500 pair of shoes that's tearing up before he should. And I think that's the issue. That is the issue. Charles Riley says he's suffering as a Jags fan. I know that's that Blake Bortles love. That's that Blake Bortles pain. Tariq Cohen, I think he should get more touches. I don't know about conventional runs, but I do think there is a way you could say that he should get more touches. But we'll see what happens. Maybe Demetrius Harris turns into if Demetrius Harris turned into Martellus Bennett, I'd be just ecstatic if that happened, but probably isn't.
Pocket, I'll be weak. I'm rather unique.